Have we had any discussion, Gail? Are we already recording on streaming?
No,
Okay.
we're just waiting for you. So Shannon, you can let us know when you're ready.
Okay, great.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, if I can get a mover and a seconder, please, council, to open up the meeting. Peter and John. Moved by Peter Kistemaker, second by John Paroff. Be it resolved that we do call this special meeting of council to order on Wednesday, May 19th, 2021 at 6:05 p.m. Those in favor? And that is carried. None opposed. And we'll continue on with the approval of the agenda. If I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Drago, Belinda. Moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that council does hereby approve the agenda as presented. Those in favor? And that is carried. None opposed. Okay, item number 4, disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Disclosure of conflict of interest. If you have that, council, you can declare that now or at any time throughout the meeting. And we have a couple of presentations this evening. The first one being from Watson and Associates. Just a second. I'm sorry. I feel a bit unprepared here. So we're looking at our water and wastewater rate study, and we have some guests tonight virtually in Hornpain. I thank you for being here and for showing us the draft study. If we could have Gary will be presenting. Gary, do you have anyone with you this evening?
Yes, I do. Navreet Bains is my colleague, and we've been working with staff together to put the analysis and presentation together.
Okay, welcome Navreet too as well to Hornpain virtually, and I'll give the floor over to you, Gary and Navreet.
Excellent, thank you. Pleasure to be here, Madam Mayor and members of council. I think if Navreet can take control, she's got the presentation. She says I'm a little technologically impaired, so I trust her more than myself in these matters.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
That's good, Navreet. Put it on presentation mode, please.
Sorry, give me 1 sec.
Perfect. Thank you. So if we go to the first slide, or sorry, the second slide, page 2. And slow transition here.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
Is it the computer or the internet, Navreet?
It's my computer.
Do you want me to take control?
Um,
I have it accessible.
yeah, I just don't know what's going on here.
All right. So if you'd click down and then I need to be given control. Everyone see the presentation now? Okay, perfect. So Pleasure to be before you. So we're going to walk through some different aspects of the calculations we've done. Give you a little bit of background on the legislation because if you all recall, we had a very sad event in 2000 with Walkerton. And as a result of the Walkerton, they went into having a 2-year inquiry, which basically led to introduction of a lot of legislative changes. I actually was part of 2 of the 6 expert panels that were there in trying to shape the future for municipal government and how they would provide the services into the future. So part of what we'll present tonight is talking about the water and the wastewater system needs. We'll talk about the capital costs, which are extremely important. That's an area of focus with provincial legislation. I'll touch upon that with you. And then we'll talk about the operating costs in the future. Operating costs are extremely important, but the capital costs are the ones that you'll see as we move into the future are going to have more impact on the rates that we pay for our water consumption. And then we'll talk ultimately over time. I think this is one of a few presentations, so we'll talk about the rates that we will be recommending in the future. Oops. There we go. So very quickly and just at a very high level, you can see since Walkerton, there's been considerable legislation which are impacting municipalities, the way they run the day-to-day systems, the way they do the reporting, and the way that they operate with staffing, testing, all of those different things. Most of the day-to-day operational aspects come from the Safe Drinking Water Act. That's the major piece of legislation which guides municipalities. It also guides laboratories. It guides technology firms, etc., on the minimum standards they must meet in providing water. We had, at the same time the Safe Drinking Water was passed, there was an act called the Sustainable Water and Sewage Systems Act. That was a piece of legislation that required municipalities to inventory all their information, assess how the capital, all the infrastructure is working, and to come up with a very long-term plan for managing, replacing the infrastructure. That was ultimately replaced by 2 pieces of legislation. The 5th bullet down, the Water Opportunities Act, and then the 7th bullet down, Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act, have actually been put in place to kind of stand in for the original requirements from this legislation. So, and I'll touch on those in a minute. The OREG 45307 is part of what's required under the Safe Drinking Water Act, and the Sustainable Water and Sewage Systems Act was to respond to that. Basically, the province requires municipalities every 5 years to apply for a license to run your municipal water systems. And there's a number of different, there's 5 different components that they have to provide. So there's operational aspects, there's performance measures that are all part of submitting that to the province. And one of the elements is called a financial plan. And that was originally what was envisaged under Sustainable Water and Sewage Systems Act. But right now, they've got an interim approach to doing the calculation, which for the most part is taking what we will do through this study and we'll translate it into more of a financial statement format. So if council recalls, at the end of each year or the beginning of the next year, you have your accountants come forward, or your auditors, and present the information. So they take the budget information and translate it into a financial statement format. That's what the province wants right now. But as I say, through the Water Opportunities Act and this Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act, is going to be a little more enhanced. So Water Opportunities Act, there's three main pieces of it. But the key one is to provide sustainability plans for water, wastewater, and you can see they've even introduced a requirement for stormwater services. Now I'll just set that aside, but that's kind of a heads up on what's coming down the pipe at some point in the future. The financial plan is to include an asset management plan for the physical infrastructure. So there'll be a requirement for you to have evaluated all of it, cost it, take a look at the performance, and come back with a long-term plan for enhancing, maintaining, replacing that infrastructure. From that, there'll be a financial plan, which is more of a long-term look at, capital budgets, operating budgets, and the corresponding rates. So for the most part, in the short term, 10 years, we've looked out. That's what we'll be looking at, and that's what we've been working at with staff and with Aqua to prepare some information, and I'll present that shortly. There'll be a water conservation plan. We don't know what that means right now. As I understand my discussions with Ministry of the Environment, they'll be looking to provide some level of targets to achieve over time, and those targets will be put into regulations. So there's no heads up what this means other than I think over time they want to see a proper utilization of a limited resource. So the conservation is, in their minds, the way to achieve that. There'll be an assessment of risks that may interfere with the future delivery of the service. So that will be something which may arise through engineering evaluation. They're also concerned about, obviously, global warming and the effects of the change in weather, on how that affects the systems. So more will come on climate change initiatives in the future. And then lastly, strategies for maintaining and improving the service to ensure that future demand is satisfied. So these are the 5 criteria that have to be addressed ultimately once they fully implement the Water Opportunities Act. Most of what we'll present today addresses at least the asset management plan, the financial plan, so that will be, the big portion of this legislation, and we'll give you some insights into, and even tonight's presentation, give you some insights into what that means. The Infrastructure for Jobs and Prosperity Act, if you recall, the province put this out, and they're looking for municipalities to develop a fairly comprehensive review of all of their assets. And you can see that the first little line there talks about strategic asset management policy. So that's generating the basic guidelines or policies that you would use to measure your asset managements, do the calculations, etc., into the future. You can see that the second one talks about assessing the levels of service, the performance, your assets, and for the core services, which is water, wastewater, storm, roads, that evaluation should be completed by mid-year next year. And then 2 years later, you'd look to have that completed for all the rest of the services. So that would be your softer services, arenas or parks, etc., and then fully put the asset management plan together by 2025. So the ministry will be looking, with respect to water and wastewater, to be looking for information that results from the 2022 analysis. So somewhere between the 2022-2024, they'll be looking for you to pull this information and rationalize it through the Water Opportunities Act. Exact timing, the regulations, we're not quite sure. With COVID and such, the ministry's even pushed back the dates. So my latest and greatest discussions are not very clear on what all of this means as they roll out over the next couple of years. So obviously, as they do, we'll be advising you. So this, once again, just summarizes in in verbiage the graph that was there on the prior page. So if I get into the actual, so that's a little bit of background, so you understand where the province is looking to move municipalities over time. So now this is part of our assessment. And as you can see right now, this is the billing rates that you have for water and wastewater. And the layout is to basically, you don't have water meters so that you actually don't measure the flow from each individual property. Historically, what's been set out is a flat rate. So this is the annual charge for these different categories of properties. So you can see single family residential units for both the combined water and wastewater. So your full bill is 1,734 units, $34 per unit. If you're only receiving water, but not wastewater, then you have a reduction. It's roughly in the range of 60 some odd %, and you'd pay $1,148 annually if you're only receiving water. If you have full services, then you're at the 1,734. As we go through, you can see we've got multiple, like higher density types of residential developments. We have commercial businesses. We've got some specialized agreements. We have CN for the road building. There's actually a railway rate, a couple of lines down, garages, etc. So you can see they historically you've moved to determine a rate depending on the type of use, the type of building. So this is a flat rate, and these are achieved. And we've seen these in many municipalities where they don't have meters in order to actually determine the amount that these individual properties consume. We've given here a little bit of the customer profile. So you can see that you have 415 residential customers. You have 23 properties that are in the commercial customer. And then as you go through, you can see that we have these different categories. The one to focus in on is the one that says single detached equivalent. And in the blue, that's the water. And in the green, that's the wastewater. They're very close together, but there's a couple of properties, as I've noted, that are on water but don't have wastewater service. That's why there's a slight difference in the tallies between the two. And what we wanted to represent here is, and this is what we've done quite often, is our standard becomes a single family home, and the average use of water for a single family home. Then as we move into these different property categories, we look to say, okay, what is the equivalent flow, or what's the equivalent you have relative to this residential unit? So a commercial property, you can see here the 23 actual customers translates into the equivalent of 32.4 single detached equivalent. So the amount that those 23 are being charged, if we divide their payments collectively divided by the a residential unit, then they would equate to 32 single family homes. So a single family home. So that's how much that group in total are contributing, the equivalent of 32 homes. And as we've gone through, we've looked at the charges and we've said, okay, the amount you're paying is equivalent to 32 households for the commercial. You know, if we go down to the very bottom, the Legion would pay the equivalent of 3 single family homes. So obviously their usage and such has more water use in quite often. So you would reflect that in a higher charge. So that is the relationship. And we keep coming back to this because I think it's important for people to understand their bill relative to, here's what I consume in my house. And when I go over to these other properties, this is an equivalent of how much they would be consuming. As part of our forecast, we've looked at trying to address, the potential for additional units coming on stream. If we're going out 10 years, obviously we would want to make sure that we're recognizing potentially new properties that are coming on stream. And so what we have in the forecast for the most part is 1 to 2 additional homes, single detached homes that are coming on stream. And we've also recognized that there may be a potential for a larger development, say a hotel or that type of element that may be there in the future. So over time, we are making adjustments from the equivalent of 584 as the basis for the charge. And we've added for some additional growth to occur. And obviously they would share the financial burden of the system, similar to all of the existing customers. Now, we've talked about capital infrastructure. Once again, this is where the province has a very focused direction on the capital infrastructure. And we've talked with Aqua in order to help develop a capital forecast so that we can look at that in the calculations we do. With the work that they've identified at this point, you can see on the water side, they've identified almost $1.4 million in infrastructure that they would recommend being constructed. And you can see that we've given you the dollar amounts, and we've given you the year that they would expect we should be targeting to address this particular expenditure. So you can see that a smaller amount is identified for the treatment facility. And then you can see on the water distribution side, we've got roughly about 1.2 million of the 1.4 million, which is related to the water distribution. So there's valve replacement and repairs, as well as various types of water main enhancements or improvements over the period. On the wastewater side, you can see that we're approaching or a touch over $2 million. Half of that basically is for the water pollution control plant, the UV project, and then the rest of the infrastructure is dealing with, or the rest of the costs are dealing with the other infrastructure. So you can see over time, we're averaging maybe $200,000 a year for wastewater. We're averaging about $1.4 million a year for water. And once again, if we're not getting any capital grants from the province, this money has to be generated from the users of the system. Next slide. Oh, it's me. Sorry, forgot. To put this into perspective on the capital plan, what we wanted to do was, remember back when I talked about the infrastructure for jobs and prosperity, they want an assessment of the infrastructure and such. In going through and working with the information from the municipality in Aqua, you have about almost $30 million in water infrastructure and about $22 million in wastewater infrastructure. If I take those costs and I divide it on a per customer basis, that means that the township has invested about almost $51,000 per customer to get the water into the property, and then about $38,000 per customer for when the effluent leaves the property in order to convey it across to the treatment plant and then to treat it and discharge it into the appropriate water course. So in total, we're talking about $89 million per customer for the value of the system. This is where I come back to say that the province has focused in on infrastructure and are looking for municipalities to assess it and to come back with potential financial plans. When we look at this order of magnitude, I think the province has given consideration to the fact that some of these costs, if we're down in London or something, their equivalent costs probably range at about $30,000, but we're into some investment, then it's still going to be very costly. And
sorry, Gary, can I just stop you just for a second? Right. I'm just worried about an internet connection. Did anyone else have internet connection issues?
Yes, I did, Cheryl.
Some across the board here? Okay. Gary, just if you could just back up to your last point where it was the per customer investment by the township. If you could just start there again and continue, because I missed from that point on.
That's fine. Once again, it could be my connection. I live in a little community called Puslinch, so maybe my internet isn't as good as some of the other communities, but so I apologize for that.
We totally understand, Gary. We struggle ourselves, so yeah, I think that would be a good if we just pick up from there. I think everyone will be back on track. Thank you.
My little village is 660 people, so we're not a huge community. So I apologize. So all I wanted to say is when you take a look at these costs, because the infrastructure is considerable and you have a smaller amount of customers, then you have a higher amount of cost per customer. If I went to a place like, let's say, London, Ontario, they would probably be tracking at around $30,000 per customer. So, but they're a bigger city. They have better, more density and such. So their costs tend to be on a per customer basis much smaller. So that was the only point. But this is where the province wants us to focus in on. And I think that over time, the province is aware that maybe as they roll out the different legislation, they may want to start to focus in some specialized grants to help some municipalities. So these types of plans will help to inform the province on potentially, hopefully, assisting municipalities such as yourself into the future. $88,000, $89,000 per customer is quite a sizable investment. I just wanted to present in a little bit more detail, going from the left-hand side to the right. You can see we've detailed the individual costs by function. So we have water facilities, equipment, valves, and hydrants, and then the actual distribution mains. And we've done a similar. The capital presented, that other table was inflated. So we took the money on a year-to-year basis and kind of said, okay, generally you're going to see 2 to 3% increases in tender prices. So the analysis we did was to allow for a little bit of inflation. In today's dollars, it works out to be about just under 1.3 million for water, out of almost $30 million in infrastructure, and a little less than $2 million out of $22 million in wastewater infrastructure. So you can see in total, we're talking about roughly addressing over these 9 or 10 years, about 8% of your inventory is being addressed in the capital program right now. So then ultimately, over time, you have to consider the how much investment you'll have to make in years 11 to 20, 20 to 30, etc. That will be part of what the province will be looking for into the future. But right now, we've wanted to at least address the nearer term needs as part of this this process. So there we go. I've moved to the next one. Right now, the options for financing the capital are, if we can get external money from the province, that would be very helpful. There's, I think, a small amount that's been assumed for one of the projects. But if we don't get money from the province, that means that it ends up being part of the municipality's financing plan to address the needs. And that means either we collect the money directly from rates, so that would be from the operating budget or from your rates. And we've, in our analysis, what we've done is we've assessed some of that. We've transferred it into reserves so it can help to smooth the year-to-year expenditure implications. So we've addressed it as, yes, an operating transfer, but we're putting the money into reserves. And then where we don't have enough money in year to address it from reserve funding, we are addressing it by going out and borrowing from the province, borrowing at low interest rates in order to help pay for the infrastructure. You can see some of the other, the three box, without the check marks, the three boxed areas. Those are specialized recoveries that are allowed for under Development Charges Act or Municipal Act, which really aren't a major opportunity for you. So most of the cost will have to either be hopefully receiving some monies for the province, or you have to generate it through your own finances. So that'll be the challenge on a go-forward basis, is trying to generate the money to pay for these. For right now, those, and this is inflated dollars once again, what we've presented is on the water side, we probably can fund the best share of it through, as I say, through your water rates, and then transferring the money into reserves, and then from the reserves funding the capital. We'll still need about $250,000 in debenturing. On the wastewater side, though, you can see we need probably about 65% of that capital, or $1.35 million, to be funded through debentures. A little bit of provincial grants, about $165,000, and the rest coming from our transfers from the reserves, our transfers from the operating budget into the reserve, and then to finance the capital. So this is the funding plan, and these, obviously, these transfers to the capital program do have an impact on your operating rates, and that correspondingly will have an impact over time on the actual rates that the individual residents would pay for. So to you, Gail, I think there's a pause at this point that I would. I'm not sure if any council member has any questions at this particular point, or I'd handed it back to Gail for the moment.
Thank you for your presentation, Gary. Yes, we're going to be moving into an in-camera session, and I'm going to hold off questions until we've had the whole presentation. And this isn't open to public discussion either, so there's no need to ask for public consultation or public questioning. And I will need a resolution to move into closed. Go ahead, Gail.
So I just want to explain a little bit, because the Ministry of Municipal Affairs, who is presenting at 7, had their time set a long time ago. So if we don't have time to finish the closed session, we'll have to come back out, do the Municipal Affairs presentation, and then go back into closed. Or if we're done closed, we will likely, I don't know, I think there's a bit more presentation to do and open afterwards. So that's why you got the various links tonight. So we'll just have to kind of play that by ear time-wise. So if we can come out of closed about 6:55 if we're not done, in time to get the ministry's presentation on the go.
Okay, that sounds good. So if I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Belinda and John. Moved by Belinda Kistemaker, second by John Perroff. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting at 6:39 p.m. be closed to the public in order to discuss. A meeting of a council or local board or of a committee of either of them may be closed to the public if the following conditions are both satisfied. The meeting is held for the purpose of educating or training the members. At the meeting, no member discusses or otherwise deals with any other matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision-making of council, local board, or committee. 2006, Chapter 32, Schedule A, Section 1031, pursuant of Section 231, 3.11 and 2 of the Municipal Act 2001. Those in favor? And that is carried. None opposed. Okay, council, will meet you in the closed session link. Okay, I see that all of council is present. So if I can get a mover and a seconder to open up our open session, come back and open. Peter and Drago. Moved by Peter Kistemaker, second by Drago Stefanik. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain does hereby return to open council at 6:57 p.m. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, we're continuing on with our our special meeting, and we do have a second presentation. And I'm happy to welcome Municipal Affairs and Housing to our meeting virtually in Hornpain tonight. And we have quite a crew on with us, and I was excited that we had a meeting with them and they were able to come and present to us the different tools that are available for us for affordable housing. So I'm not sure who exactly, Kathy, is going to speak first, and I'll let you introduce yourselves to our Hornpain residents here, and welcome to Hornpain.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I do have a few staff here with me tonight. I'm noticing that we are still missing a couple, Liana Bacon and Cindy Couillard. But I'll start the introductions anyway. So for those who don't know me, I'm Kathy Horgan. I'm the Manager of Local Government and Housing with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
This conference will now be recorded.
With the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing are in the Municipal Services Office out of Sudbury. So we cover all of the Northeast. With me tonight, I have Paul Prosperi, who is, you all know him as your municipal advisor. He has recently taken on a secondment as our Senior Municipal Finance Advisor in Sudbury. He's staying on for a little bit until we can hire some more staff. I also have Steve May, who's our Senior Housing Planning Advisor in our office, and he works in the housing side of our local government and housing unit. And then we have Carol Holtby, who's a planner in our Sudbury office, and she'll be delivering the planning slides tonight. And we're also expecting, hopefully she's going to make it, Liana Bacon, who is, her home position is Senior Municipal Finance Advisor. However, she has taken on a secondment and has moved into the housing team lead role for the next 6 months. We're also supposed to have Cindy Couillard, who is, many of you may know her. Cindy is the housing team lead in our office. She is taking on a temporary assignment in our London office. So, but Cindy's depth of knowledge on housing will come in, excuse me, handy for us tonight if you have any questions. So we will be tag teaming. Is someone going to be, Gail, are you going to be showing the video or the presentation and moving the slides, or are we doing that?
Just give her 1 second there. You're still on mute.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great.
Gail, are you talking to us? You're on mute. Oh, she's having technical difficulties, she's saying.
Cheryl, I can give the screen over if somebody wants to tell me who's going to present.
Okay, sorry. Let's get this figured out. Thank you, Melissa, for that. We're having technical difficulties all around tonight. Kathy, who can be your presenter for you, and we'll hook you up there through Melissa.
I can do that.
Paul, do you want to do that? Thanks, Paul.
Yes.
Okay,
certainly.
great. Thank you, Paul. So, Melissa, you can hand it over to Paul. I think we're all getting a test of our patience through this virtual meetings and learning, right? Learning all these new methods. And hopefully they don't just go in a drawer when this pandemic's done.
No, I'm sure we'll be using them for a while.
Well, I hope we take the best of them.
Yeah.
Can I just do a quick audio check and confirm everybody can hear me? Carol Holtby here.
I can hear you, Kara. I think everyone else is. We're getting nods all around. Yep.
Perfect.
Is everyone able to see the screen?
It is being shared. Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. I leave the floor to you all.
Okay, well, again, good evening, and thank you for inviting us to speak with you today about the various tools from planning and finance that a municipality can use to incent and encourage affordable housing. So we've gone through the introductions. I still don't see Liana on or Cindy, so hopefully they come on by the time we get to Liana's parts. So I'm really happy to have all of these knowledgeable staff here with me today, and we will, tag team throughout the presentation to provide you with a lot of good information. Hopefully, it's good information for you as you consider moving along on your housing, looking at your housing needs. So if you can move on to slide 2. Oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong slide. I have the deck up on another screen. Too many screens. So for those of you who have participated or attended Ministry of Municipal Affairs presentations, this is our standard notice to advise you that, the presentation, the information that we're going to provide to you is intended to be, information to help guide you. We're going to provide some examples and some links to various documents. Again, they're intended to help guide you. We aren't lawyers. We're going to share with you information about what's on the screen or about what's in the legislation. But really, we would encourage you to, seek professional advice through lawyers or accountants or, even developers throughout, as you go through the process. So again, just a reminder that the information is intended to help and not by any means be any sort of legal advice. Next slide, please. So for this slide just provides you with an overview, with an indication of what we're going to cover today. So our team will talk about the various tools within the Planning Act and the Municipal Act. They'll provide some practical examples right here from a couple from Northern Ontario. And we'll offer some considerations at the end of the tools discussion that may be of benefit to the municipality to help you create affordable housing opportunities and hopefully make it easier to attract the type of housing that you need and want in your community. So if you want to move on to the next slide. We can, might as well go to slide 5. We love our little placeholder slides. So before I get going, I will start by showing you this toolbox. So the toolbox is intended to be symbolic of the types of toolboxes that we all have. So we all have different tools that we use on a daily basis that are at our disposal. So and then these tools can be for, our very specific tasks. And without them, we wouldn't be able to do our job or even be able to be effective at trying to complete a task. So just think of what we're going to provide you tonight with as examples of tools that you can put into your toolbox. So during the remainder of the presentation, the team will walk you through the various tools that we hope you will we hope that we'll be able to allow you to lay the groundwork for affordable housing. And we know that having the right tools in place now will help you leverage and enhance opportunities for the future. Next slide, please. This slide just provides you with a quick snapshot of the different types of tools or policies that you can implement in order to, or to add to your toolbox. So I'm not going to go into these, just a quick snapshot for you. And so Kara will cover the Planning Act. Liana, hopefully when she gets on, she will, we'll figure that out after Kara's done. Liana will cover the Municipal Act tools as well as the development charges. So I'm going to now turn it over to Kara.
Thanks, Kathy. So as Kathy mentioned, my name is Kara Holtby. I'm a planner with the ministry, and I cover all of Algoma and Parry Sound districts. And today I'll be speaking with you regarding some tools that are available to you under the Planning Act. So if we can move to slide 8, Paul, please. Perfect. So the Planning Act and the provincial policy statement set out the rules for land use planning and development in Ontario. So the Act provides many tools to help achieve a full range of housing, including affordable housing, and it identifies the provision of a full range of housing, including affordable housing, as a provincial interest. The PPS provides more specific policy direction, and these documents require municipalities to address local housing needs. Next slide, please. So additional residential units are also sometimes referred to as accessory or basement apartments, second units, or in-law suites. They're described as self-contained residential units with kitchen and bathroom facilities. And approval authorities must now permit an additional residential unit within a detached house, semi-detached house, or row house, and a structure accessory to a dwelling. Municipalities must have permissive policies in their official plan and implementing zoning bylaw to permit additional residential units as of right. However, they must also comply with any applicable laws and standards, including the building code, the fire code, and property standards bylaws. Also, Ontario Regulation 29919 provides further direction for municipalities related to, among other things, parking standards and the fact that the residential units need not be the owners of the lot. Next slide, please. So some benefits. They can increase the stock of affordable rental units, helping to create mixed income communities. They can create jobs in the construction and renovation industry and support local businesses and the local labor market. They can maximize use of existing housing stock and land, optimize infrastructure, and support transit and active transportation. They allow homeowners an opportunity to earn additional income to help meet the cost of homeownership and support changing demographics by providing more affordable housing options for extended family, elderly parents, or for live-in caregivers. Next slide, please. So as the planner for Algoma District, I'm aware that your current official plan is under review, and we in fact received a draft just recently, I think maybe a week or two ago. But having said that, the municipality can always circle back to your planning consultant to take advantage of some of the planning tools I'm speaking about today. In terms of adding some additional policies, if something sparks your interest or you feel like there might be something missing or a section that you can beef up on based on what you hear today. But generally speaking, official plans should include provisions for a long range and mix of housing types and densities, measures and procedures for attaining housing objectives, and targets for the provision of housing to low and moderate income households. Next slide, please. So a zoning bylaw implements the policies of the official plan and set out permitted uses and development standards for specified zones, among other things. Municipalities can specify minimum as well as maximum height and density in their zoning bylaws. So this could guide development towards more compact, intensified built form outcomes and create opportunities for more affordable housing. Next slide, please. So a garden suite means a one-unit detached residential structure containing bathroom and kitchen facilities that is ancillary to an existing residential structure and that is designed to be portable. Municipalities can have laws authorizing garden suites as a temporary use for up to 20 years. Municipalities can then also extend the temporary authorization for garden suites by further 3-year increments as needed. Next slide, please. So within a community improvement plan area, municipalities can undertake a variety of community improvement activities, including affordable housing, and provide financial incentives for development and redevelopment within built-up areas of the community. Municipal official plans must contain policies related to community improvement, and municipalities must have enacted a bylaw designating a CIP project area in order to take advantage of this tool. Next slide, please. And municipalities have the option to reduce or waive planning application processing fees. A reduction or waiver of fees for applications required for an affordable housing project would reduce the costs associated with that development. Next slide, please. And municipalities can also enter into agreements with developers to allow for the reduction or waiving of parking requirements. Next slide. A municipality can require the conveyance of land or cash in lieu for park purposes as a condition of approval of a plan of subdivision or development or redevelopment. And municipalities can tailor their parkland and cash in lieu requirements to facilitate the development of affordable housing. Next slide, please. The Planning Act requires decision makers to have regard to the effect of a proposed subdivision or consent on matters of provincial interest. Matters of provincial interest are listed in Section 2 of the Act, including the adequate provision of a full range of housing. Next slide, please. Municipalities can establish demolition control areas protecting ownership and rental properties, as well as properties with less than 6 units. Within demolition control areas, municipalities can refuse to issue a demolition permit unless a building permit has been issued to erect a new building on the site. Next slide, please. So some additional Planning Act tools we have here. We have what's called the Development Permit System, or formerly Community Planning Permit System. It can combine aspects of zoning, minor variance, and site plan control, and it can encourage affordable housing by promoting a range of housing types and densities, promoting appropriate residential intensification, compact form, building and site design, by eliminating third-party appeals from the local planning tribunal, which has actually been renamed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, I believe. Moving on to community benefits charges. They apply to fund municipal infrastructure for community services such as affordable housing that are needed to support new residents and businesses associated with new development. They can only be charged on developments greater than 5 stories and 10 units or more. Developments such as long-term care homes, retirement homes, and post-secondary institutions are excluded from community benefits charges. They can only fund new community services or portions thereof, not otherwise covered by development charges. Inclusionary zoning can be used around major transit station areas and where the minister has ordered a municipality to implement a development permit system for the purposes of using inclusionary zoning. This normally applies to higher density forms of development. Municipalities can require a certain amount of affordable housing be included in development proposals in the areas specified for the purposes of inclusionary zoning. And that brings my piece of the presentation to an end. Kathy, are we going to wait until the end for questions or section by section? Did everybody catch that? That brought me to the end of my presentation. Are we doing questions at the end or after every section? Kathy, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, we did hear you, Kara. I was just going to tell Kathy she was on mute there. There, you're not muted now, Kathy. Oh. I'm not hearing Kathy at all. Is anyone else hearing Kathy?
Sorry,
Oh.
my mic wouldn't turn off.
No, I can't hear you, Kathy. Are you hearing us, though?
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Oh,
I know my mic. It's pretty finicky. It keeps
Yeah, you keep cutting in and out, Kathy. Would you like to do questions by section?
Going on and off. Yeah. Thanks. So,
Okay, I'm going to open the floor
Can
up
you
to
hear-
council. I can hear you, Kathy. We'll just open up the floor to council for questions for the section that Kara presented. Is that all right? She's still having difficulties. Kara, you can still hear us though, fine?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Okay, council, if you have any questions, you can unmute your mic and And I don't see any questions from council at this time. I see two shaking their head. Okay. Okay, you're good to continue. That was easy, Kara. Thank you for your part.
Thanks very much.
Okay, go ahead, Kathy.
Sounds like Kathy is having difficulty with her microphone. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, Paul. Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so why don't I take a crack then at this next section? I can't see the participants who are in the meeting because I'm sharing my screen, so I can't see if Liana is on the call. Although I don't think that she is. Is that correct?
No, I don't see Liana on the call. I do see an MEJH. I'm not sure who that is, but
Yeah, she just popped on. Liana's there.
Oh, there's
Yeah.
Liana.
Are you there, Liana?
Yeah, apparently timing in life is everything because
Perfect.
it literally just popped up when I saw Municipal actuals pop up on the screen. I apologize. I was having some difficulties getting on with my bandwidth, but just sorry for clarification. Is someone going to be skipping the slides for me or do I have control somehow?
I'll do that. I'll do that for you, Liana. You just tell me when to move ahead.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks. So we can skip to the next slide then. Thanks, Paul.
Mhm.
And apologies again for my delay. So under Section 107 of the Municipal Act, municipalities are able to provide grants to any person, group, or body within or outside the boundaries of the municipality for any purpose that council considers to be in the interest of the municipality. However, it's important to note that Section 106, which many of you will be familiar with of the Municipal Act, actually prohibits municipalities from bonusing. And essentially that means that municipalities are not allowed to directly or indirectly provide financial assistance to any manufacturing business or other industrial or commercial enterprise. So for the purposes of this presentation, a commercial enterprise may include an apartment complex, and it's up to the municipality to determine what's that description. But keeping this in mind, there are still a variety of options that are available for municipalities to use in order to provide incentives for affordable housing. And the remainder of my part of this presentation will speak to the Municipal Act tools that the municipality may wish to consider discussing further. We can go to the next slide, please. So the next slide speaks to municipal capital facilities agreements. These are agreements that can be used by municipalities to create relationships with other parties to deliver municipal facilities. An example of this could involve an agreement between a municipality and a not-for-profit, where the municipality provides financial assistance for affordable housing facilities. Under these agreements, assistance provided from a municipality could include giving or lending money, giving, leasing or lending property, guaranteeing borrowing, providing services of municipalities, of employees of the municipality, or providing tax exemptions or reductions. So when we hear the word facility, we often think of like a building or something like that. But under the Municipal Capital Facilities Regulation, which is referenced on this slide, 60306, those facilities can be defined as any of the things that we just mentioned and that appear on the screen. Next slide, please, Paul. Before a municipality can enter into a municipal capital facilities agreement, it must first enact a municipal housing facility bylaw. And the bylaw would include a definition of affordable housing. It would include policies regarding public eligibility for housing units to be provided as part of the municipal capital facilities, and a summary of the provisions that an agreement respecting municipal housing project facilities is required to contain. You can go to the next slide, please. So generally, the multi-residential class includes rental apartment properties with 7 or more units. The residential class includes condos and single residential dwellings. The municipal tax rate for multi-res or multi-residential class is often higher than the rate for residential class. And municipalities have used the option to tax new multi-residential properties at a rate that is similar to other residential properties by either reducing the tax ratio on existing class of multi-res properties to a rate that is closer to the residential property class, or establishing a new multi-residential property class with a tax ratio close to the residential class. So municipalities might do this to incent people to build multi-residential properties. But under the Ontario Fair Housing Plan, that new lower rate was made mandatory. So all new multi-res buildings with a building permit date of April 20th, 2017 or beyond will now be required to tax at a rate similar to other residential properties. The range of fairness, if you know stuff about tax collection and ranges of fairness and tax ratios, is 1 to 1.1. In most cases, once land is in this new class, it stays classified as new multi-residential for 35 years. This change does not reduce existing municipal property tax revenue because it only applies to newly constructed multi-residential buildings. It's important to note that if a housing project receives program funding and the ratio is set higher than 1.0, which is the residential rate, then a municipal capital facilities agreement must be utilized in order to reduce the tax ratio for the housing project to ensure that it complies with the funding. Next slide, Paul, thanks. So as you would have heard in the planning portion, which I missed, municipalities may enact bylaws to prohibit and regulate the demolition of residential rental properties that contain 6 or more units, or the conversion of such properties to a purpose other than residential rental. So as well as it's on the planning side of things, Section 99.1 sub 1 of the Municipal Act also has that provision to allow municipalities to enact those bylaws. This tool can assist with the preservation of existing affordable housing stock in the community, since units can sometimes be lost through demolition or conversion to condo units. And next slide, please, Paul. Another tool that municipalities can use is to establish a municipal services corporation, and that can provide a product or service that the municipality itself could provide with a few restrictions. Benefits of the corporations include the ability for municipalities to work with partners in the public, private, or nonprofit sectors. It has the potential to provide municipal services and develop facilities more efficiently. And corporations could potentially create increased capital or pooling of expenses. You've got the expertise of staff and those resources, and sometimes better economies of scale as well. A municipality may designate a municipal services corporation providing economic development services as a designated economic development corporation. And economic or DEC services may include the provision of residential housing, public transportation systems, parking facilities, and other activities. And with the economic development corporations, municipalities have the authority to use a levy for economic development services. The municipality would then collect these special levies and could transfer the funds to the Municipal Services Corporation. And Paul, you can probably skip through 2 slides. We'll go right to the Development Charges Act tools. Thank you. Municipalities may exempt affordable housing from being subject to development charges, and we know that in the Northeast we only have 3 municipalities that actually utilize development charges. So that's Sudbury, North Bay, and Callander. But just briefly, we'll just mention that affordable housing units would have to be exempted if you were using this exemption municipal-wide or within defined area. So you couldn't exempt a particular developer or development, but you could exempt an area, or you could have it municipal wide if you wish to do so. And I think I'm turning it now over to Steve to speak to some practical examples.
Steve, your mic is showing as on, but we can't hear you. I'm wondering if maybe you need to change your audio setting. I know when I signed in, it put me to a setting that I'm not sure was compatible with my computer. So I picked the other one, which is why I did a sound check right in the beginning. So try to go into your audio settings and change the default to the other one that's available.
All right, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Steve. Thank you.
Heather, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can all hear you, I believe. I see everyone nodding their head. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you for that information, Kara. That's exactly what the problem was. I apologize to council for the technical issue. Hi, I'm Steve May. I'm the Senior Housing and Planning Advisor with the Ministry in Sudbury. Right now, I'm going to take you through some practical examples of some of the tools working by themselves or working together to help create situations that would lead to incentives for affordable housing in your community. Next slide, Paul. So the first one I'd like to talk about, this one is a little old now, but still fairly relevant. Lots of things happened in the township of Seguin. That is a municipality located in the district of Parry Sound, and it has policies in its official plan that encourage the use of surplus lands within settlement areas for the purpose of affordable housing. The township adopted a municipal housing facilities bylaw, which identified the use of a number of financial tools that also help facilitate affordable housing. And this led to the development of a 10-unit affordable housing project targeted to seniors in the form of 2 5-unit complexes. Along with provisions to waive Planning Act application fees, building permit fees, and the reduction of the tax rate to the project so that it was at or below single-family residence in the township over a 20-year affordability period, the bylaw also indicated that the township would transfer surplus municipal lands to the developer at no cost. And as a result of this, the Parry Sound District Social Services Administration Board was able to allocate $1.2 million in combined federal and provincial funding for the Seguin Place project. Next slide, please, Paul. In the township of Johnson, they have an official plan that includes provisions which encourage the municipality to work with sector stakeholders to provide affordable housing. In order to facilitate the development of Possibility Community Homes, which is a fully accessible 4-unit, 2-bedroom housing complex in the Deborah community, the township of Johnson waived Planning Act application fees. And through the Investment in Affordable Housing Initiative, the Algoma District Services Administration Board allocated $200,000 in federal provincial funding to make Possibility Community Homes a reality. Next slide, please, Paul. The city of Kenora adopted a community improvement plan for the Kenora and Keewatin settlement areas. And this community improvement plan includes a component that will provide financial incentives for the creation of affordable housing. And these incentives could include a grant for background studies that support new multi-unit seniors housing construction and the conversion of existing buildings, which include accessibility features. It could also include an affordable housing tax increment-based grant to stimulate the renovation, rehabilitation, or redevelopment of existing buildings and underutilized sites to better create affordable housing. Or an accessibility grant to promote accessibility in existing buildings, including multi-unit residential. And that's a community improvement plan adopted under the Planning Act. Next slide, please, Paul. So this next example is actually from the city of Sault Ste. Marie and also pertains to a community improvement plan, but with a slightly different take. In the city of Sault Ste. Marie, they identified a deficit of affordable rental housing in their community. So as a result, the city developed the Rental Housing Community Improvement Plan. This plan creates a framework for the city's administration of a rental housing tax increment equivalent grant program. So through the CIP and the grant program, the city is able to use property tax assistance, including grants, as an incentive to encourage new investment in rental housing, with the goal of further diversifying the range and type of rental accommodations available in the city and to increase the municipality's residential tax base. The plan encourages the construction of additional barrier-free accommodation in the city, along with the development of facilities that support assisted living environments. Expected outcomes include the addition of affordable rental stock to the community, along with more and varied assisted living opportunities. Next slide, please, Paul. So back to official plans for a moment. In the municipality of Smith Falls, they've developed targets to help incent the development of affordable housing in their community. They've developed official plan policies which include a target of 30% for new housing in the community to be affordable for home ownership and market rental units both. The town's official plan also includes policies which call on the municipality to fast-track Planning Act applications for affordable housing development. So every little thing that you can do can assist with making it just a little easier to incent affordable housing in your community. All right, next slide, please, Paul. I think this is my last one as well. So in Northern Ontario, integrating planning between housing service managers like the Algoma District Services Administration Board and municipalities such as yours can create some challenging situations at times due to the relationship between DSABs and municipalities. We know in Southern Ontario, housing service managers are often part of a regional or county municipal structure, but in the north, DSABs, like the ADSAB, are separate entities from municipalities and have many municipalities within their service area. So making explicit connections in official plan policy between DSABs and municipal planning approvals related to affordable housing can have positive impacts and build relationships. At the very least, they can certainly keep the lines of communication open. So the town of Kirkland Lake's official plan includes policy which encourages the town to consider the needs of moderate and lower income households in keeping with their DSAB, which is the Temiskaming Social Services Administration Board, in keeping with their 10-year housing and homelessness plan. The plan also includes policy regarding the notification of the DSAB when large residential developments are being considered, and asks for the DSAB's input on achieving housing targets in the official plan. So by building these policies into municipal official plans that reference DSABs and their local housing and homelessness plans, there's a greater opportunity for DSABs and municipalities to come together at critical times, such as when development is being proposed or when comprehensive reviews of housing policies are occurring. So I think that's all I have in the way of examples. I'm not sure whether I'm turning this now over to Kathy or to Cindy. I think Kathy may have been having some technical difficulties. So whoever is up next, I'd like to hand it off.
Thanks, Steve. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Kathy.
Oh, okay. I think things are fixed.
My apologies for earlier. My computer was completely frozen. I couldn't move my mouse, couldn't move anything. Anyway, so it seems to have been fixed for now. So if you can move on to the next slide, please. So in this and the next slide, we will offer you some considerations or questions that you may want to ask yourselves as a municipal council or group. So some things you might want to look at are, what are your housing needs in general? Are there any is there a target population that you're looking at creating housing options for? So for example, are you looking at families? Are you looking at seniors? Is it for low income individuals? So you'd want to ask yourself too, with respect to sustainability, what is your housing supply made of right now? Are there any gaps? Do you have a housing stock owned by seniors with no other housing options available to them within the community? So for example, would they have to leave the community to be closer to their families or to access other support services? So again, some questions that you can ask yourself. You'd want to take inventory. So has the municipality adopted any of the tools that we've talked about tonight? What would be needed to access these tools? You may want to begin discussions with your council and staff, and you might want to have some conversations with the ADSAB. So engage, and that's a good segue into engaging the ADSAB. So as you know, the ADSAB is the service manager agency for Horn-Payne and has the responsibility to provide housing and homelessness programs funding that is funded by the province. So the ADSAB administers many different programs to low and moderate income individuals and families within your community, as well as to those at risk of homelessness or that are homeless. So you probably are aware that the DSAB does have a 10-year housing and homelessness plan that identifies housing needs beyond what you may anticipate you need. So again, another good reason to have conversations with the ADSAB. If you haven't started those discussions yet, we'd be more than happy to help facilitate a meeting with between you and the ADSAB staff and board. So again, just something else that we could also help you with. I'm sure that the DSAB staff will be more than willing to discuss any opportunities or collaborate with you on your initiatives. So seek advice. You're not alone. We're here talking to you tonight. There are many other professionals. You have your municipal staff. There are other professionals and other municipalities too that may be going through something similar or have gone through something similar that where they may be able to offer you some guidance or assistance on their experiences. And we do know of a few municipalities who have undergone or undertook development of housing in their community that we could put you in touch with. There are also additional resources at the end of the presentation, and I believe we provided you with a PDF link so that we can provide you with the slide where you can actually just click on it, because I don't think you can do that in a PDF format. If you can, great. If not, Gail or another staff can reach out to Paul, and he'd be more than happy to send you those links in a proper document. So some of those guides that I'm referring to are tiny homes, co-ownership and life leases. So those are guides produced by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing that we think might be very helpful to you. And again, last question is, how can we help? So staff in the ministry, in our office, we're here tonight. We're here. This doesn't end our assistance. We'd be more than happy to, provide you with whatever information we can going forward. And our contacts are at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So not really going to get into this slide very much. Again, just to say that, we do have the tools, and we would be more than happy to work with you as you go through this exercise, and happy to provide any assistance that we're able to, or put you in touch with the right people. So I believe if you just want to move to the next slide, I think that's just our contacts and then questions and then contacts. And then the last slide is, I believe, the slide that has the list of resources that we'd be more than happy to provide to you. So we can open it up to questions, and whoever is best to answer the question will answer your question.
Did I just mute myself, or was I on mute the whole time?
Mute.
Oh, great. Thank you, Kathy, and your team for the great presentation. And I apologize for all the technical difficulties around the table tonight. Isn't this wonderful? So I do open the floor up for questions now, and I see Councillor Stefanik has a question. Go ahead, Drago.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the presenters. Thank you for being here. Great presentation. I'd like to refer back to page 22, please, on the section 107, general power to make grants. I'd like to have further clarifications on that, a simple clarification. Also, I understand you have the power for affordable housing. I get that. What are the other examples that we as council could have the power, because it's very tricky, the fact of bonusing versus not bonusing. So could I have a little more clarification, please? And thank you.
I'll leave that to you, Kathy, to decide who's best from your team to answer.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we lost Liana. I think we lost Liana, so I can take a first stab at it. So I'm just going to find that slide. So it was slide 22, you said, right? Yeah, so generally, the Municipal Act provides that in Section 107 that, a municipality does have the general power to make grants and loans to ratepayers within the community. So that would be, like an individual within the community and to certain groups. But with Section 106, that's where we get into the bonusing rule for commercial or industrial enterprises. So affordable housing, even though it's affordable and it may be for low-income individuals, and you're thinking it's housing, so it's residential, that's not really a commercial, it's not really a commercial property, right? However, when you look at housing and when you're looking at multi-residential properties, that may be deemed to be a commercial enterprise because you have an individual who is, trying to make a profit on this building that they are building. So that's kind of where the bonusing rule comes in, which then would require if a municipality was to want to offer any sort of incentives to that type of facility, then there are tools that you would have to put in place in order to be able to do that. So that would be the housing facilities bylaw, and then the agreement to implement for that specific property to implement the incentives. Not sure if I answered your question.
If I go through, Madam, just supplement your question. I thank you for that. Now, can you give me a specific example then? You gave me one that's possibility. What would be specific example with this Section 107 would apply to municipal council and we could assist somebody, please? Thank you.
Okay. So in a situation, so take a municipality can often provide, say, grants to local service clubs. So say your Lions Club or Minor Hockey Association, groups like that. That's where Section 107 gives you the authority to do that. But as soon as it gets into any sort of commercial or industrial enterprise, that's where the restrictions come in. Does that one help?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any further questions from council? Gail, I open it up to staff, if there's any questions from staff. Gail's still having microphone problems. Directly, I'll open up we did create Municipal Service Corporation Horn-Payne Housing, and our project manager is on the line tonight. And if there's any questions there as well.
Not sure. Are you asking me if I have any questions?
Yeah, if you have any questions, you're welcome to. Usually it's just council that speaks at council unless staff is required to do so. But this is a special meeting for the housing, affordable housing. So I open the floor.
Okay. Now, I was just wondering, Kathy, about how, as we're thinking about providing incentive for affordable housing and engaging in public-private partnership, that I noticed under the municipal capital facility agreement, you might be able to you might be able to guarantee, let's say, borrowing on part of a private entity. How would that sort of looked at vis-a-vis the Planning Act or in the Municipal Act regulation?
I see Liana is back. Not sure if she's wants to take this. If not, I can try. Okay, I see her mic's off or on now.
Yeah, so in relation to those types of things, essentially what that allows is for the municipality to, maybe the best way to explain is, so they can act as a guarantor on borrowing for a proponent. So a proponent could approach the bank seeking funding, and the municipality could act as a guarantor on that. So that's essentially how that particular piece of it would work.
Okay, does
Okay,
that answer
thank
your
you.
question? Yes? Okay, thank you. Any further questions from council? Okay, I'm not seeing any, Kathy, so that's your team's getting off easy tonight. I'm just I don't know if we've had 2 nice days of nice weather, so maybe council's enjoyed a lot of beautiful weather lately. But I think we are going to probably have questions in the future. I know that we've talked in the past about facilitating that meeting with the ADSAP, and I'll let Gail continue that process with your staff, Kathy, and we do want to have a great relationship. I love the example in the presentation of the one community, Kirkland Lake, actually putting it right in their official plan. So that's, I found that interesting. I like that. And if there's no further comments or questions, I guess we can wrap up, or if there's anything that you have for us, Kathy.
Well, I just want to, on behalf of the team, thank you very much for inviting us. So we're always happy to, get out and talk to municipalities about, the policies and programs or legislation that we have. So always here to help. If there's any questions pertaining to the presentation tonight, reach out to filter them through Paul, and he will send them off to us. And we will ensure that we get a response back to you. And again, reach out anytime you need. We're more than happy to help you out.
Okay,
and thanks
thank
again.
you so much. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. It's been our pleasure.
Bye. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night. Okay, council. We still have a bit of closed session to finish from earlier. Oh,
Give me a
sorry.
minute. Carol will be here. I'm having
Yes, Karen.
I'm here. Oh, never mind. Here we go. Sorry.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so just to continue on, council, we do you need to go back into the closed session to finish that portion that we didn't get to finish earlier? So if I can get a mover and a seconder, please. Belinda and Peter. Moved by Belinda Kistemaker, second by Peter Kistemaker. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting at 7:52 p.m.
Excuse me, it's Cindy Couillard
Yes.
here. I'm just having difficulty. It's not allowing me to sign off, so just bear with me. Carry on, but I'm just trying to get signed off, okay?
Yeah, we're going to end up closing this momentarily as well,
Perfect.
Cindy. So if
Thanks.
you
I
don't
just
get
didn't-
off ahead of time, we're probably going to kick you off. Sorry to
That's
say
good.
that. But
I just didn't want to be intruding, and I wanted you to know that I'm still having difficulty signing off.
no, you're not intruding at all, Cindy. We're just in an open session, so it's
Okay, thank
nothing
you.
at all. Okay, so that's moved by Belinda Kistemaker, second by Peter Kistemaker. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting at 7:52 p.m. be closed to the public in order to discuss a meeting of a council or local board or of a committee of either of them may be closed to the public if the following conditions are both satisfied. The meeting is held for the purpose of educating or training the members. At the meeting, no members discusses or otherwise deals with any matter in a way that material advances the business or decision making of the council, local board, or committee. 2006, Chapter 32, Section A, Section 1031, pursuant of Section 239, 3.1, 1 and 2 of the Municipal Act 2001. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. Okay, so we'll meet you in our closed session link. Okay. Let us know when we're good to go there. Okay, we're good. And Gail, you're pressing record?
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, if I can get a mover and a seconder to return to open council, please. Peter and Belinda. Moved by Peter Kistemaker, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Hornpain does hereby return to open council at 8:59 p.m. Those in favor? And that is carried. None opposed. Okay, so we have a bit of a wrap up of your presentation, Gary.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I can take control of the screen again, there's about 4 slides to finish up. Thank you. So we had presented your current rate structure, which is common to differentiate the charges based on different types of users, a single-family home, its uses versus a restaurant or a hospital or a school. There's always these relationships. That's done in order to try and reflect in some, either through engineering standards or through some measurements, a reasonably equitable way of distributing the costs. Others, if you want to move towards equity, then there's an opportunity to install meters so that you can charge based on actual consumptions. And there's 3 different types of rates which are normally used. Nothing magical about them. One's called a constant rate, and it just means if you consume only 1 cubic meter in a year, you'd pay $1. If you pay use a million, you'd pay 1,000,000 times $1. So it's the same rate, not differentiated by consumption. These other 2 rates, increasing block means as you consume more, the rate goes up. And the decreasing, as you consume less, actually the rate goes down. So the increasing is used to encourage conservation. The decreasing quite often is to encourage larger plants that consume high amounts of water. So these are considerations if you move to metering. And about 85% of the municipalities in Ontario do metering. About 15%, similar to yourselves, don't use meters. If you were to move towards meters, obviously there's an installation cost. These are not only to purchase the meters, but then they actually have to be installed in homes, which means you need to, hire the assistance of plumbers and such to actually get inside the home in order to install the meters. So the costs quite often are in the range of about $1,000 to do that. Now, a municipality your size probably would go with what is called an AMR, which just stands for automatic read. And then basically you eliminate the operating costs for staff to go door to door in order to read each of these meters either on a monthly, bi-monthly, or quarterly basis. So it's probably the best one to use. Now, but keep in mind, if we had that $500,000 in expenditures, you're going to increase the debt that you'd have to recover. So an annual expenditure of $35,000, for example. So it's something that can be achieved. It's good. It would add an extra cost in order to have that pure equity in between individual users. So it's something to be considered. Now, the last thing I wanted to point out, and I think I touched upon this with that Ontario Regulation 45307. This is the one where I mentioned from the Safe Drinking Water Act, the province requires municipalities to file a financial document as part of getting their license to run the system. So from the rate study that we would do here, once it's approved by council, we would then take that information and translate it into the format that the province wants this reported on. So as I say, it's going from something which is more rate oriented or more cash payment oriented, and it translates it into more like an audited financial statement. So it's the way that the province wants it reported. They want, I guess, commonality amongst all these reports. To me, the rate study means a lot more because the common everyday person on the street can look at it and understand where the expenditures are going. But then I'm only an economist, I'm not an accountant. So where we will, the things that we would ultimately be asking for council's direction through this process. So once we complete the studies and such, is we presented a capital program, so that would need to be considered. The operating program, for the most part, is Aqua's cost for running the water and the wastewater system would have to be included in the rates. We will be coming back with some calculations on the rates for council to consider. And then ultimately, based on that, we'd be able to finalize that financial plan, which would then be submitted to the province. So that completes my presentation, Madam Mayor. I'm at your pleasure on if there's any further discussion or questions.
Okay, thank you so much. And I open up the floor now, Gary, for questions for Gary and the presentation. No further questions from council. Okay, I do have one. Go ahead, Melissa has a question. Go ahead, Melissa.
No, I just wanted to talk to Gary about our vacancy rebates that we provide to people or residents and multi-unit residents that when they go out of town or if they have one of their units empty, we usually don't charge them. However, it's come up in council discussion and with the administration numerous times, regardless if the resident or the business owner or whoever isn't using the water, we still have all those flat rates of the operation and the capital and the debt charge. So what's your recommendation how we would go about addressing that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's a very good question. Most municipalities, if they're on a meter, they charge their metered rates are normally two parts. There's a fixed part, which is charged per month, whether you're down in Florida, so to speak, and your meter's not running. There's still a fixed monthly charge that they would impose. Because when you come back from Florida, let's say, you expect that the municipalities maintain the system, so the treatment plant still runs effectively. The water mains coming to your house are working properly. They've been cleaned, maintained, etc. So there normally is a charge, regardless of them going away and not actually using water. So I would probably say that charge is somewhere depends on the municipality, depends on how they've done the rate structure, but I would assume somewhere in the range of 40 to 50% of their water bill would continue even though they're not consuming water.
Thank you.
Gary, just a follow-up question to that, because you were talking about metered rates. Do you know of any municipalities like ours where we're on a fixed rate structure where we have a fixed minimum rate And then if they do want to, say, go to Florida for 6 months, and because currently we turn the water off and there's a charge for that, and then there's a charge for turning it back on.
Well, the municipalities I'm referring to do the same thing. They charge them to turn it off and turn it back on, and there's a certain charge that continues even though they're down in Florida. So that's no different than other municipalities. If right now it would appear that you're charging zero, I think there would be. I don't think it's unfair to potentially charge, maybe a 50% charge if you wanted to give some reduction. As I say, there's a sizable amount of the cost to most of the municipalities' costs are fixed. They do not vary significant with water usage. So if half your residents went to Florida, your operating costs are not going to drop in half. The only thing that really changes is the cost associated with chemicals. So basically, when you're putting the, whatever your, like chlorine or whatever into the system to purify it, that would reduce, and your electrical cost will reduce, your hydro, because that's what's being pumped into the system. But you still need all the staff there. They still have to clean the pipes. They still have to do all the regular maintenance to the treatment facility, et cetera. So generally, the reduction in overall costs is only in the range of about 5%. So if you cut if half the people went to Florida, then you would see only about maybe 5% reduction, but only for those 3 months. So it would be marginal against the water bill. So that's the reality of the costs. Most of them are fixed. If you wanted to do a reduction down to 50%, then that's something which is more by policy, not by actual cost.
Okay. And just to follow up with that too, then, just to clarify, so that was the reduction plus you're still shutting the water off and turning it back on with that charge as well. And then a further follow up is, if you have say someone that's vacated their home and they've moved out of town and they're trying to sell, it would fall under those circumstances as well. They could turn their water off and have the reduced rate during that time period.
That's absolutely correct, Madam Mayor. If there would still be a charge going against the property. In all these other municipalities, there would still be a charge that would be monthly.
Okay, thank you for that. So, councillors, do you have any other questions? I just have one further question about the completion of the water financial plan for meeting the regulation. So how often is this, how long is this plan? And how often do we have to do that and update it?
Once again, a good question, Madam Mayor. You are required every 5 years to submit all of the paperwork to the province to get your license to run your water system. The financial plan goes out, it has to go out a minimum of 6 years. And you do not, even though budget expenditures may change, let's say if we said, gee, you're going to have a 2% increase next year and it becomes 2.5%, you don't have to refile the document. It's left to the judgment of either the treasurer or the person in charge of the water system to judge whether there's a significant enough event that you should redo the plan. But it's not mandatory, but it must be filed every 5 years.
Okay. And this regulation came into effect in 2007?
That's correct.
Okay, so up until, this is for staff, up until this point, Gail, has Aqua done this for us, or have we done this in house?
No, we actually got Watson and Associates to do it in 2016. They did
Okay.
our current water financial plan.
Okay.
And before that, honestly, I don't know. It was before my time in the seat, so I'm not sure what was done before that.
So it was done in 2016, and we're,
Yeah, so it's due for, well, our drinking water license is due this year. So this is triggering the need for a new water financial plan.
okay, so that old plan must be available to us. Is it on our website?
You know what? I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get you it if you would like to see it, if it's not there.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, is there any further questions from council? The only further question I have, just on different operating programs, is there any way to judge or any documents out there to compare what it costs to run a facility like ours through operations?
Very, very difficult. I mean, you could ask somebody such as Aqua, or who their customers are, and maybe do a little bit of research to see how their costs are for the same service. But it's very difficult. One of the biggest problems is municipalities, their particular treatment systems can differ significantly in between municipalities. For water, for example, surface water is a different way of treating water, and there's probably 3 or 4, well, maybe 5 different types of treatment plants that a municipality might use. And which one they use, maybe you have very cold water, some of them have not so cold water to draw from, so it may influence which system you use. If you're in a river versus groundwater, these are all variables on the costs. So you'd have to find somebody, Madam Mayor, that's comparable to you, and then take a look at a similar type of treatment facility, really, in order to get a reasonable handle on the comparable costs.
Okay, thank you for that, Carrie. Is there any other further questions from council at this time? And Gail, for the considerations arising from this process, is there anything further that you need from council at this time that we're missing to carry on?
I don't think so, but Gary, I'll just ask you, when you come back with a document that you're going to provide for the public consultation portion, if you would have the sort of options for rate structure, options for metering, that type of thing, so people can sort of comment on that based on what you've heard here tonight, and then fine tune it once more to bring back for adoption. Does that sound fair?
Okay, perhaps you and I can explore what that means without having. I could talk about the different rate structures and such. I'm not sure if I can calculate a rate structure without having more information, such as water pumpage into the system, how much sewage comes down. So it's a little bit more advanced, but I could do something, but I'd need more information in order to get to that point.
Or if council's happy with the structure that you've provided tonight, we could do that and just work on the options of, like you say, how you're splitting it up with whether you're metering and how that would affect the debt charges and things like that. Maybe a little bit of direction on that, perhaps.
I can provide that.
Okay, the only other part too is just understanding leak detection. I think that's huge, is capturing that and having some sort of understanding for the public. Is that something we can include with the water metering? Because my understanding is they go hand in hand.
Yeah, and through you, Madam Mayor, the type of system that I'm like meters that I would suggest, these automatic reads, it's almost like through the internet they communicate. So you could almost like during the night when people are sleeping, you could see how much volume is used by those homes and see whether there's that's how you detect the leaks. I mean, it's one of the ways of these automatic reads would allow you to do that. So I could make some commentary on the additional benefits that arise. But unless you have that, it's difficult to know what the leakages are.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be beneficial, and just understanding, like, because if it's digitalized, then I'm thinking that it could run with a program that the program is following, like staff could slot in certain times and then it just reads it out. It's not that they have to manually do that either. It would be a program that would be set up to monitor our system.
I'm sure there's ways of programming these things. You're getting into outside my pay scale. I'm not a water meter operator, but I'm sure that I know that you can press the button, it'll read it. So that if you wanted to read it at 1 o'clock in the morning and then read it at 5, you could track how much usage was during that period when most often people are sleeping, but not everybody, but you can track it. You could do some type of exercise to track the potential leaks. Yep.
Okay. Okay, that would be my only, just so that the public is aware. I don't think they, like myself, they'd probably be in the same situation that you see this automatic reading monitor, and I wouldn't associate that with leaks or how it would help our community and how it would bring health to the overall system as well. So, okay, is there any further comments from council tonight? I don't see any, so thank you so much for your presentation tonight and being with us. And I think it's probably dark in your areas by now, because I know it's getting dark up here. So I'll say goodbye and thank you so much for being with us.
Great, it was a pleasure, Madam Mayor. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, just a couple of housekeeping items, council. If I can get a mover and a seconder for our confirmatory. Drago and Belinda. That's moved by Drago Stefanik, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that bylaw number 1861, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at their special meeting of council held on Wednesday, May 19th, 2021, be hereby read a first and second time and be considered read a third time and finally passed. Those in favor? And that is carried, none opposed. And finally, our closing resolution. If I get a mover and a seconder, please. Peter and Belinda. Moved by Peter Kistemaker, second by Belinda Kistemaker. Be it resolved that we do adjourn this special meeting of council held on Wednesday, May 19th, 2021 at 9:23 p.m. Those in favor? And that is carried. None opposed. Okay, council, thank you for sticking with us through all the ups and downs and crazy virtual challenges we had tonight. So take care, everyone.
Great job, staff. Thank you.